Love under the scope.
Welcome back to Love Under the Scope. This is a podcast where we will explore all of the ups and downs that come with being in a relationship with someone. We will explore some of the topics that you might not see on social media or maybe other shows, things that might be taboo or might be challenging for us to face, but ultimately are very empowering for us in our relationship. There's no manual for how to be with someone the right way. And so I think it's fun to navigate these very nuanced topics and find out how we can maybe remove some of the shame that can come up, especially around taboo subjects. We might feel like there's something wrong with us, or that we're not meant to be with this person, or we're not meant to be in love at all, which is so sad. There's no human being that is not made for love. That's just not a thing. I definitely suggest you exploring the topics that we dive into on your own. Don't just take my word for it. I will share with you some of my experiences, whether they're personal or working with my clients. I am a relationship coach, so I do work with individuals and couples together on a lot of the topics that we cover on this show. In fact, all of the topics that I have covered so far, I have touched on with my couples. I love the subject of relationships. It's something that I have become very passionate about, especially in my own relationship of going on 7 years now. We're engaged to be married. And so a lot of the things that I talk about, I do it because I have explored them on my own, and I just find them so interesting and so fun to learn how to be a better partner. And when we learn to be a better partner, we learn to be our own partner, our own best friend. By relating in a more loving and compassionate way, we learn to do the same with ourselves. So I think this work is fundamental to being a human being. I really think this is important stuff. It doesn't really matter what you do with your life, what your profession is, what your passions are. A lot of us are in relationships. That's kind of a thing that we share in common. So I believe every human being, even if you're not in a relationship, you can learn a lot from the topics that we're going to explore. Whether you decide to explore them even further on your own, I do advise that, but that is your choice ultimately. Our topic for today is how your views and your beliefs on the opposite sex greatly affect your relationship and your dating life. This applies to both men and women. I am going to be addressing this topic from the viewpoint of a straight person. So if you're listening and you are a woman, I will be talking about men and vice versa. I do think there is something to be taken here if you are in a gay relationship. I don't know exactly what that would change as far as the actual dynamic, but it all comes down to conditioning, and we'll get into the nitty-gritty. We're all conditioned. It doesn't matter if we're straight or gay or whatever we might be. We are all conditioned as far as the way we relate to other human beings, especially romantically. So we're going to get into how our beliefs about the opposite sex can actually shape, in fact, 100% do shape and affect our relationships and our dating experience, how we feel when we are meeting somebody new and we're starting to get in deeper with them and watching the relationship unfold. We might notice some patterns that come up over and over again in our relationships, in our dating life, and they can be quite frustrating. A lot of them can be traced back to our beliefs. Whatever we think about all men are this, all women are that. This is what I'm talking about here. Before we get into the meat of this subject, I want to address why we would even want to explore our own beliefs. Exploring our beliefs can help us to actually change our life for the better. We see and perceive our entire life based on beliefs, including our relationship. Everything that happens to us, everything that we experience, everything we notice goes back to beliefs. Doesn't mean that we need to get rid of all of our beliefs or change them. We can choose to carry some of the beliefs that help to shape our values. And we might have beliefs that we do want to change and we want to shed in order to have a better relationship with men or with women and to overcome some of the patterns that, I don't know about you guys, but I've been through patterns that show up in relationships no matter who the person was. I could have been dating John, I could have been dating Bob. Both guys, I would have the same pattern come up. It could have shown up in different ways, but ultimately, when you distilled the pattern down to the core root of the matter, it was the same. And who was the common denominator? Me and my beliefs. That's why you would want to work through your beliefs, or at least have an awareness of them, so that you can take back the power in your life, in your relationships. If you're dating, taking back the power there. It all comes back to freeing ourselves from the confinement that we can place around ourselves with these beliefs, these limiting beliefs. Throughout this episode, I may use the term beliefs about men, beliefs about women, beliefs about the opposite sex. I want you to know that we can use all of these terms interchangeably. This isn't just an issue that women have. This isn't just an issue that men have. We all share this kind of conditioning and limiting belief patterns. So just know if I do say men, I could also replace that with women and vice versa. In this episode, we're going to cover what is a belief. It might sound obvious, but there's actually some nuance here within the actual term belief that I want to get into. Then we'll get into where our beliefs come from. How do we form our beliefs? I'll share with you how those beliefs that we form end up shaping our relationships and affecting our dating life, our relationship with our partner. I'll touch a little bit on why we should work on our beliefs, what that can do for us in our life, and then we will round out the episode by talking a little bit about how you can start to address limiting beliefs. So what is a belief? A belief is a deeply ingrained and conditioned idea that we have around some aspect of life. In terms of this episode, it would be a belief that we have around the opposite sex, something that we have been conditioned to understand about the opposite sex. Beliefs at their core can be distilled down to a very simple phrase in my experience. So an example would be, all men are untrustworthy, or women only want money. So they're very basic for the most part. And in fact, it can be very helpful for us to sit down and write our beliefs at their most basic form. For the most part, if we have formed a belief about the opposite sex, it will be a blanket statement that applies to the entire group, or at least the majority of that group. So if we have a belief about men, it would be all men, including boys. It could be our male children. It could be our grandfather. It could be any man that would fall into that bucket. This part is very important. A belief is not something that you want to believe. It's not a wish. A belief is what you actually believe about the opposite sex. You might think that you have respect for women, and when you get down to the core of the issue, you actually don't. And that's okay. We have to admit that we do not feel how we might want to feel about all men, about all women. You might think that you respect men. But when you sit down and you get to the core of the matter, you realize you think all men are stupid. This is reality. Reality is what is really there deep within you, not that surface level part of you that might be performing or, again, wishing that you felt a certain way, but the real belief. Some of our beliefs can be more conscious, especially if we have done some work around uncovering those beliefs, and a lot of them will be subconscious until we actually do some digging. I will say this again as well, not all beliefs are bad. So we might have positive beliefs. If you grew up watching your dad be the provider for your household, you might then grow up to believe men are providers. And that is not a bad thing to believe if that's what you want to hold true. That might be a value for you. In that case, we wouldn't necessarily want to get rid of that belief or work on it, but at least having the awareness can show us a truth about ourselves. This is what I believe to be true. Men are providers. That will eventually shape your relationship with your partner, with your family. So where do our beliefs about the opposite sex come from? In my experience, the majority of our beliefs will come from our childhood. They could also come from negative experiences or positive experiences that we've had with ex-girlfriends, ex-boyfriends. But in my experience, the root of our beliefs will stem back to our childhood. And the way that we form them in our childhood can happen in several ways. The first way is that we learn and we are conditioned to believe something about men or women from our mothers and our fathers, the way that they interacted with each other, the things that they told us to believe. So they will actually demonstrate to us what to believe about the opposite gender. So if our mother believed that our father was untrustworthy, she couldn't depend on him, she would probably have shown us with her actions, her behavior, her words, that was true. And as children, we are like sponges. We absorb all of this information, especially from our parents, who are very important figures in our lives. If your parents were not around, it could have been another caregiver. But we watch them, we watch the way they interact, the things they say about each other, and we absorb that as true. Another way that we might pick up on a belief from our parents is by watching the repeated action of our parents. So if your father was constantly cheating on your mother, you might end up believing that men cannot be trusted. Men are cheaters. If you watched your sister get special treatment as you grew up, you could potentially learn the belief that women have it easy in life. Men have to work hard, but women get whatever they want at the drop of a hat. These are just examples. Look at your own experience with your parents, your siblings, any extended family potentially, and do some digging around what you learned from them to believe about the opposite sex. We will also learn and be conditioned to believe something about men or women based on our extended network. So our family outside of our core parents and siblings, our friends, our teachers, our religious figures. You may have had a particularly nasty female teacher as a child, and that could potentially lead to you believing that women are bitches. Women are nasty. The interesting thing here about our extended network is that these people will be constantly reflecting back our beliefs to us. So life has an interesting way of showing you what you believe. If you believe that women are bitches, life will serve you bitchy women on a platter, or women that you perceive to be bitchy. It's life's way of testing whether you would like to work through this belief yet or not. You actually have the choice when the trigger comes up. Oh, this woman is such a bitch. That is life giving you the choice to face your belief and then work through it. Nobody can make you feel a certain way about men or women, although it might feel that way sometimes. We form our own beliefs within ourselves. That's a choice that we make, whether it's subconscious or conscious. And that means that we also have the choice to unwind these beliefs as well. So it's not all bad. Another way that we pick up on beliefs as children is through society. So any types of media, TV shows, movies, music videos and song lyrics, we absorb these things as children as well. Think about how men and women were portrayed differently in media when you were a child. I grew up in the 90s, so women were portrayed in music videos like shaking their ass and being, what some people might call slutty and bimbos and kind of this airheaded vibe. Men were shown as sex pests. All they care about is getting ass, getting women, getting money. If you didn't grow up in the 90s, maybe it was different for you. So whatever era you grew up in, take a look at how men and women were portrayed in media. And that could inform you a little bit on how you think about men or women. So we go through childhood. We are like sponges for this information coming from all of these different places in our lives. And then we take that in, and eventually in our adulthood, we still have those beliefs. Those are deeply ingrained within us. You don't just absorb a belief, form an entire personality and an entire belief system around that, and then you turn 18 and poof, it goes away. No, we carry that into our adulthood. We bring that into our relationships. In fact, those beliefs, the same ones that we formed in childhood, will serve eventually as the very foundation on which we will try to meet a man or a woman to date, and then eventually form a long-term relationship. The cool thing here is that when we bring those beliefs into a relationship, a lot of the time we don't have to do too much guesswork to actually understand what are my beliefs. And that's because, like I said earlier, we will constantly have a feedback loop of what we believe about men based on how we perceive our partner. So any of the frustrating patterns that you have with your partner that come up over and over again, any communication patterns, behavioral patterns, sexual patterns, anything like that that comes up over and over again is reflecting back to us a belief. It might seem like it's something we can blame on our partner. Well, they're lazy and they don't understand me. But take a deeper look, there's always something that we believe about ourselves or the world or men that is at the core, that is one layer deeper than the part of us that wants to blame our partner. For example, if my partner doesn't take the trash out and I feel like I have to nag him all the time, part of me wants to blame him. He's lazy. He doesn't care. I always have to do everything around this house. But let's go one layer deeper. What might be there? I'll give you an example. It could be, I am not lovable enough for him to take the trash out. I do not matter enough for him to notice the trash. Distill that even further down and you have, I am not lovable. I do not matter. So that's a belief that you would have about yourself rather than the other sex. But in that same example, you might also believe men are lazy. Men don't care. Men don't help around the house. So take that example, see if you have something that lines up in your life, something that keeps bothering you in your relationship, and notice if you can go from the top layer and go deeper and deeper and deeper until you have that core belief statement that is, like I said, usually quite brief. If you are dating, you may find that this same idea comes up as you meet men. Whatever you believe about men, you might notice that over and over and over again as you go on dates. Sometimes I've heard this described as confirmation bias. I think that's an adequate way to describe this phenomena. It's basically we have a belief about men that they are dense and they are dumb, and we end up seeing all men through that filter. And it's actually quite detrimental to our dating life because it can keep us from moving forward with a man, for seeing him for who he actually is, rather than the filter that we have had on for so long. Why would we do this? Why would we prevent ourselves from moving further with somebody that we might potentially like? This is why, because the ego is a tricky thing. The ego likes for us to stay in this quote unquote safety mode. It's like a comfort zone. This is what I understand about men. Therefore, this is what I choose to perceive about them so that my belief is not challenged. When we decide to challenge a belief, that means we're stepping into the unknown. That means we could be surprised. We're opening ourselves up to something that is not under our supposed control. We don't actually have control, but the ego wants to believe that it can control any situation. So if I really deep down believe that I know that men are stupid, I'm going to use my filter of men are stupid so that it fits my narrative and so that my understanding of the world is not challenged. If it were to be challenged, that could potentially be risky for me, which is a shame because life becomes a lot more fun and enjoyable when we open ourselves up to surprise and to mystery. But we have to be able to move past the ego's desperate attempt to keep things under control based on what we think we know about the world. It's not what we actually know. How could we know everything about this big, crazy, multifaceted, beautiful world? We don't. We would like to think we do, or at least the ego would, but we do not. Our beliefs about the opposite sex can keep us trapped in these loops of very frustrating and exhausting patterns. If you're in a relationship or you have been in the past, you will know what it feels like when that same argument comes up for the thousandth time. And that feeling of, oh my God, we are here again. And it's the same old crap. It's this constant loop of disconnection, misunderstanding, resentment, anger, and ultimately very deep sadness and potentially loneliness. We may feel broken because of some of the beliefs that we hold so dear to us, no matter how detrimental they are. They can keep us wondering, why does he never listen to me? Why doesn't he love me? Why do women only want me for my money? Is there something fundamentally wrong with me? We are in this perpetual loop of self-victimization, self-inflicted torture, basically. This loop ends up being not just detrimental to ourselves, but also to our partner and to the relationship itself. Not to mention, when we believe something about an entire group of people, 50% of the population, or give or take 50%, we are stripping away the complexity and the humanity of that entire group. We are robbing them of surprising us, of having depth, of being able to show up in a way that would be surprising, delightful, that could be fun and fulfilling. Your ego will refuse to be wrong about your beliefs until you do some self-reflection to uncover them and eventually work through them. It takes time, but it is very much worth it. So why should we invest in uncovering and working through limiting beliefs? If not for your partner, if not for your relationship, at least do it for you. You will get to move on and be free of these beliefs that keep you feeling unlovable, that keep you feeling hurt and trapped in these patterns around the opposite sex. Here's an example of how that might happen. I had a client where the woman believed at the core that she had to do it all and she couldn't rely on her partner. That led to her being in a frenzy all the time around the house, cleaning everything, wondering what did she miss today? What needs to be done? What chore do I need to fill my time with? Because I have to do it all and my partner will never help me. Because she believed that, she lived into it. If I believe I have to do everything around the house, I will do everything around the house or as much as I can. And I leave zero room for my partner to come in and help me. A lot of resentment builds up when we hold beliefs so true, like this one. We end up resenting our partner. Well, he never helps me. I have to do everything. When this woman was able to work through the belief of I have to do everything, guess what? She was able to relax. She was able to kick her feet up and let her partner step in and do some chores around the house, which, by the way, he was happy to do. He didn't know she was suffering doing these chores. She was keeping that bottled up. She assumed that's how life had to be. I have to suffer. I have to do all of these things. And so she was able to set herself free from believing that. Work on your beliefs because it's also going to help your relationship. When we work on our beliefs, both partners, by the way, we can do it as just an individual. I could work on my beliefs and it would end up in the relationship changing, whether my partner engaged in that self-reflection as well. But when both members of the relationship are willing to do this work, you have massive expansion that is able to happen. What do I mean by expansion? I mean growth. I mean working together as a team rather than as two competitors who are constantly fighting each other. Have you ever felt that way in your relationship? That you are actually going up against your partner? What a shame, right? So doing this self-reflection together can help you to come together and connect and then work towards a shared goal as a team. You will see each other differently by putting this work in together. And that's what I mean by changing your life. By looking at your beliefs, you can actually change your reality. Look at your beliefs and self-reflect and work on them for your partner. Give them the space to be themselves and to not assume that they are one way and objectify them that way. Give them the space to surprise you. Give them the space to challenge what you deeply believed up until this moment about men or women. This is the ultimate act of respect for another human being, is allowing them to show up as they are and seeing them for that rather than what you have assumed that you know about all men and all women. And lastly, do this work for the planet. When you do this work within yourself, it will always ripple out and affect the entire planet, especially those who are close to you. It's like a butterfly effect. It just keeps rippling outward. If you are wanting to make an impact on this planet, if you are wanting to help humanity, this is an amazing and effective way to start, is by looking at your beliefs. Think of it like a bottom-up approach. It can feel very overwhelming to go, well, I gotta help the world and there's a lot to do, right? There are so many atrocities. There's so many people who are living in destitution. And what am I supposed to do? Start with your own backyard. That's what I personally would recommend. How do we begin to reflect and to work on our beliefs? I want to start this section out by saying there's no shame in having limiting beliefs. There's no shame in seeing the opposite sex one way and having these maybe even derogatory beliefs about them, thinking they're stupid, thinking they're dense, thinking negative things about them. There's no shame in that. We are taught to believe these things. Most of the time, we didn't consciously choose, I'm going to think all men are stupid now. Let's go. No, we absorbed that information and we stored it very deep within ourselves. And then we just kind of forgot it was there. We just operated like it was normal. So that's just a human thing. It's not something that you did. It's not something that only bad people do. It's something that all people do. All people experience these kind of beliefs. In fact, give yourself some kudos that you're willing to do the hard thing and take a look at those beliefs that have been sitting there for years. Most people in their life will never do that. Most people in the world will be conditioned to believe a certain way and then die with those beliefs. So kudos to you for having the bravery and the willpower to take a look at your own shit and to be willing to work on it and to take back your power, the power that was stripped from you when you were conditioned to believe these things. Don't let that happen to you. Take back your power. The next step would be developing your awareness of what you really believe. I'm going to call back to the beginning of this episode where I said it's not what we wish we believed. It's not seeing the world through rose-colored glasses. In fact, take off those glasses and take a closer look with a magnifying glass. What do I really believe? This might be more obvious than you think. A lot of the time we're driving around and that belief comes up as a fleeting thought. Oh, all men are this. All women are that. We have an experience that's frustrating with the opposite sex. There's the belief popping up again. If you're in a relationship, you better believe that belief is going to be in your face every day. If you're having some trouble with it, take a look at the moments of tension in your relationship. In those moments of tension, what did you believe about your partner? How did you perceive your partner or all men, all women in that moment? Can you distill that down to a brief statement and maybe even write it down? Have a list of beliefs that you might carry about the opposite sex. Don't worry how trivial that moment of tension might seem. I just talked to you about the trash not being taken out. That could absolutely be the catalyst for you getting a deeper understanding of your beliefs. In fact, I would start with the trivial ones. Sometimes the really triggering moments can be kind of messy. So can you start with the stuff that seems trivial? And as I said earlier, going deeper underneath that surface layer, what is there? And digging as deep down as you can. It might take time. You don't have to do this all in one sitting. In fact, usually working on beliefs is something that kind of unfolds naturally as we take action and self-reflect. You'll notice that with time, you actually gather more information. So this isn't something that you need to do sitting down within 45 minutes. You have all your beliefs and you've worked through them. Absolutely not. As you look at your beliefs, let's say you've written them down, can you go through each one and ask yourself, is it really true? Your first answer might be, oh, yes, it is true. But really sit with that. Is it really true? Can you know with 100% certainty that it's true that all men are stupid? Do you have somebody in your life? It could be your friend's partner. It could be somebody that you work with, somebody that you've known in passing that defies the truth of what you believe. This part of the process can be supported by the work of Byron Katie. I absolutely recommend her book, Loving What Is, and her work in general. She helps people to break through their belief systems, and she has a very clever way of doing that. It's a 4-step process. She really breaks it down nicely, and you can actually take each belief through that 4-step process. It can be very revealing and shed a lot of light on some of the falseness in the beliefs that we might carry and the suffering that we impose on ourselves by believing those things. Part of her work is not just looking at the belief, but feeling into how does it affect me to believe this? How do I feel when I believe that all men are untrustworthy? Well, I feel paranoid. I feel unlovable. I feel scared. Why do we want to feel those things around a belief that could potentially not even be true? So how does each one of your beliefs, if you've written them down, How do they make you feel when you believe them? Know this, that your limiting beliefs are hurting you the most. Yeah, they might be painful for your partner. Yeah, they might be painful for your kids. They hurt you the most. Very stressful to believe something that is negative about an entire chunk of the population. 50% of the population. It's very stressful to carry that in our daily lives and in our relationship. In this next part, I invite you to explore how this belief has affected your life. How has this belief affected your relationship? Not only your current one, but maybe your past relationships. What occurred in those relationships that could have been a result of your beliefs? This is not about going back and beating yourself up and saying, oh my God, I'm such a bad person because I believed this about men. This is about uncovering and gathering information. It's about noticing how we really have kept ourselves in a prison of our own beliefs. We can set ourselves free by looking at what has occurred and how it's affected us and deciding to change our behavior moving forward. Based on what you have experienced in the past, what do you want your relationship to look like? How do you want to feel about your partner? How do you want to feel about men or women? What would feel better? If I believe that all women are bitches, man, that hurts. That hurts. What do I want to believe about women? Do I want to believe that they are loving and that women can be compassionate? And if I want to believe that, here's another call back to Byron Katie. Do I have proof that women can be loving and women can be compassionate? Who in my life has shown me that women can be loving and women can be compassionate? They're not always bitches. Lastly, take your limiting beliefs. You could even do this on a piece of paper where you write down your negative beliefs on one side and a line down the middle. And on the other side, you have the opposite belief, the life-giving version of that belief. An example of that could be, instead of men are unreliable, I might choose to recondition myself to believe that men will help me when I ask for support. Men respond when I ask for help. So play with that on your own. I can't tell you what to believe. I can't tell you what your limiting beliefs are. This is a very personal experience. To go through this entire episode is a very personal matter. So please don't take my word for these things. Do your own exploration that only you can do, by the way. Nobody can come in and do this for you. Ultimately, this is a choice to reclaim the power in your life and to feel more in love with your partner. Not only your partner, but your life, the reality that you are living in. This is a choice to be okay and to accept what is happening in your life, the partner that you are with. When we work on our beliefs, we are telling the world that we are ready to take back our power. But I hope that this episode gave you a little bit more clarity on how those beliefs that we carry from our childhood can absolutely affect our relationships. Thank you so much for listening today. I really appreciate you guys being here. And I want you to know that if you have any trouble with working through these things, it's certainly not a straightforward process all of the time. It can be very helpful to have somebody who understands this work, an outside professional that can guide you through the process. So I do this with my clients. If you'd like to work together, I would love that. Please do reach out to me either on social media. I am at Coached by Kelby on Instagram and TikTok. You can also shoot me an email. I am totally open to answering questions that you might have as you listen to this podcast. You can reach me at coachedbykelby@gmail.com. Thank you again, and I will see you guys next Friday.